Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the great comeback stories in American politics. We're talking about how the Democratic Party went from being completely in shambles to taking the White House, all in just a few years before World War I.
So let's get right into it. The big question is, how does a party that's described as badly damaged actually pull off a presidential win? This isn't just some historical trivia, it gets to the heart of how political power works. And to really get the Democratic revival, first you have to understand just how completely broken their party was.
So back in the late 1800s, calling the Democrats a party was, well, being generous. It was more like a collection of groups who couldn't stand each other, all under one roof. They were totally torn apart by fights over the economy, over what America should even look like as it was industrializing. They were a mess.
And this slide really just lays it all out, doesn't it? You had two parties within the party. On one side, you've got the Bryan wing. Think of it as a grassroots rebellion, a moral crusade that got people in the South and West really fired up. These were folks who felt left behind. Then on the other side, you have the conservative wing. They were pro-business, mostly in the Northeast, and they were very anti-Bryan. These two groups had basically nothing in common. National unity? Forget about it. Seemed totally impossible.
So you can imagine, right? While the Democrats are busy fighting each other, the Republicans looked absolutely unstoppable. They had big business on their side, the economy was humming along. It really seemed like they were going to be in charge for a long, long time.
Now, if there's one person who defined this era for the Democrats, it's this guy, William Jennings Bryan. He was the heart and soul, the engine of that populist wing of the party.
And Bryan, he was a force of nature, an incredible speaker. He could get massive crowds riled up like nobody's business. But, and this is a huge but, for all that passion, he just could not build a coalition that could actually win the White House. He ran in 1996 and lost. He ran again in 1900 and lost. And he tried one more time in 1908, and you guessed it, he lost.
Yep, 3 campaigns, 3 big defeats. This wasn't just a losing streak. This defined an entire generation of Democratic politics. It was a cycle of failure.
And this quote, it just perfectly captures the trap the party was in. What a distinction to have, right? The only candidate to run 3 times and lose every single time. It was the perfect symbol for how stuck the Democrats were. Republican dominance felt like a sure thing.
Okay, so let's jump to 1910, because this is where everything starts to change, like dramatically. And the wild part is, the comeback didn't start with some brilliant new idea from the Democrats. Nope. It started because the Republican Party began to, crack up from the inside.
It really all started with President William Howard Taft. See, Taft was way more of a traditional conservative than the guy he replaced, the famous Teddy Roosevelt. Taft starts appointing conservatives, backing policies that the progressive wing of his own party just hated. And in doing so, he starts to alienate a lot of people, including his old mentor, Teddy Roosevelt himself. The party was starting to fracture. And all this Republican infighting, it created a massive political opening. And in the 1910 midterms, the Democrats did something that probably even shocked themselves. They won control of the House of Representatives. It was a stunning result. And all of a sudden, winning the presidency in 1912 went from being a fantasy to maybe, just maybe, a real possibility.
For the Republicans, the election was, in their own words, a disaster. Total disaster. The loss led to all this bitter finger-pointing and arguing. It even got so bad that Teddy Roosevelt started thinking, maybe I need to get back in there and save the party myself.
So picture the scene. The Republicans are in total disarray. And right at this perfect moment, the Democrats find a new rising star to get behind. And trust me, he was not who anybody expected.
Meet Woodrow Wilson. This guy was the ultimate political outsider. His background wasn't in smoke-filled backrooms. It was in the halls of Princeton University, where he was the president. We're talking about a guy with a PhD, an academic, known more for his intellect and his moral authority than for cutting political deals.
And his rise was just meteoric. It was unbelievably fast. In 1910, party bosses in New Jersey convince him to run for governor. He wins, and he immediately starts this energetic reform agenda that gets everyone's attention. And just like that, within a couple of years, he goes from being a college president to a top-tier presidential candidate.
So Wilson's got this incredible opportunity, a real path to the presidency. But there was still one giant hurdle he had to clear first. He had to do the one thing nobody else had managed to do for decades: unite his own party.
And this is where we see that the professor had some serious political chops. He and William Jennings Bryan hadn't always seen eye to eye. But Wilson makes this brilliant move. He sits down with Bryan, makes peace with the old lion of the party. By doing that, he sent a crystal clear signal that he was a leader for all Democrats.
And with that, the stage was set. The comeback was on. Wilson went into the 1912 campaign not just as a new, fresh face, but as a genuine unifier. He was the absolute right person at exactly the right time, perfectly positioned to take advantage of the deep, self-inflicted wounds of the Republican Party.
So this whole incredible turnaround leaves us with a really fascinating question. Did the Democrats win because Woodrow Wilson was just a brilliant strategist who united his party? Or did they just get lucky? Did they just happen to be standing in the right place when the Republican Party decided to tear itself apart? It's a classic political puzzle, and it really makes you wonder, what matters more, your own strength or your opponent's weakness?